And good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate you being here. Today's meeting comes amidst a lot of change. And so what I thought was going to be a meeting with some pretty fairly solid things kind of just blew up on me. So please understand that there are going to be answers that I can't give you. Other answers would be things like, yes, we understand that and we're working on it. But that being said, I'm going to share my screen. The PowerPoint that we're taking a look at is available on the website. And a little bit later, I'm going to show you where that is once again, so that you can find the resources. Because one of the things that's going to be really critical as we move forward is that that you have the resources you need so that we together can make this the best possible situation, whichever way it goes. And Sarah Wallner, if again we got questions in the chat, please feel free to jump in and interrupt me. So again, we definitely work better when we work together. So please share resources with each other, support each other, and make sure you ask questions. Sarah and I do not ever think that there's a question that shouldn't be asked, because, you know, if enough people ask it, it's obvious we didn't share the information correctly. So today's agenda, we're going to take a look at the current state of the testing world. We're going to spend time on access right after that. So if you're here only for the access portion of the test, when that's all done, and if you've got, I'm going to pause there, and if you have questions, you can certainly jump off if that works for you. You're welcome to stay, but just know that that's a possibility. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the forward test, ANet, which is coming up next week, and then any other questions that there are out there. So given that, we're going to just take a little quick review of what's going on right now in the state of testing. So in Wisconsin, one of the things I need you to be aware of, there has been an application by Department of Public Instruction for a waiver for access to the Department of Education in Washington. That waiver was sent off at the end of January, and it takes 90 days to answer. So, and everybody is now saying, well, if there's a waiver out there, why are we doing this? Well, we don't know if it's going to be accepted. We don't know when that will happen. And if it is turned down for whatever reason, June 1st, I don't want to be the district that says, well, we only thought we were going to get a waiver. So we'll keep moving forward. The state is also applying for an ESSA waiver, which means forward testing would not be in play. Again, that was just more recently applied for. There's 90 days for the Department of Education to respond to that. Finally, there's a COVID relief bill in the state legislature. I'm getting an update tomorrow morning from someone who follows all the legislation that's going on. There is a whole section on assessment and student or school report cards. The governor, when he initially sent that bill to the legislature, had stated that there would be no testing this spring. We don't know where that's going. So we know that the legislature and the governor don't always see eye to eye. So we'll see what happens. So that's happening in Wisconsin. We know also that there is a national discussion on standardized tests this year, being what's the value of the test during a pandemic. And so as we come back, as Madison comes back slowly, we're going to consider all of this. I'm telling you this as a background piece, just so you know that this is going on. However, none of it exists actually today. None of it is in place. And so we can't just stop wish and hope. So I'm going to take this has happened since yesterday. We know that we are going to be in a phased in reopening process. What does that mean? We're researching that. We're trying to figure out how that would work. Access is the first assessment that's on the calendar. The window opens on February 22nd. Does that mean that when our students arrive back on March 9th, that we begin testing them? And my answer is absolutely not. However, the group of students coming back when it's appropriate, and that may not be until April, will be ready. We need to be ready to actually give them the assessment as they're supposed to. So the bottom line is that we need to be flexible, we need to be smart, and we need to move quickly when it is time. And those aren't necessarily things that the district is good at. And just so you know, that all large-scale testing in the district is compacted this year. So if we do move ahead and we are reopening and we get to middle school and high school, all the assessments that are belonging in those particular grades are also on the table once again. So we are dedicated, Sarah and I are dedicated to getting work done in a timely manner so that it is available, things are available to you. We are also here for questions or concerns. We are also, it's very important to us that we share information with you as clearly and transparently as possible. So if we don't know something, we don't know it. And I'm not going to make up something just to make it sound good. There are a lot of moving parts. We're going to talk about some of those today. There are others that we will not get to. And so if you have questions, please do not hesitate to email them. I'm also going to show you where on the website I'm going to put information as far as sharing resources about testing in a phased reopening. And what does that mean? What does that look like, etc. Bless you. All right. So one of the things that has been coming up has been what would that look like? Now, both Department of Public Instruction and WIDA and every assessment vendor has put together a testing protocol. I am trying to look at all of these, pull them together and see what makes sense so that we have a one-stop shop. So safe testing protocols would include things like information on cleaning. What does it mean? What is a schedule? How does scheduling work with testing? One of the things that many of them say is we have a full window. It doesn't have to be done on one day. So for instance, thinking about forward, if we had, we had a grade 3, which does mathematics and ELA, we've got a window, we've got some time. So let's be smart about how we use this, but also be aware that there are ends to the window when the windows close. One of the critical pieces is communication. I think it's going to be really important that we share this information, not only with you and with staff, but also with students. I think they deserve to make sure that they understand what's going to happen, what's going on, what will not happen, because we know how rumors start flying. And also, I want you to understand that it's really important to me that we communicate with families as in many ways as possible. We also know that not all students are going to return, that we don't know the percentage of students that are going to remain in virtual setting. How do we communicate with them? What does testing look like for them, etc. So I'm going to take a deep breath and just remind you that these are all things that Sarah and I and others are working on. I know that Peg and her team and Ben in OMGE and their team are all thinking about these things as what does it look like? How can we safely do this if that is in fact what we're required to do? So again, as you can see, we have, prior to this, I went over some of the things, the actions that are going on at the state and federal level, but taking into consideration that we don't necessarily can rely on any of that happening in a timely manner, we have to move ahead. And so these are the things that are being worked on. Okay, now I am going to start taking a look at access. I actually, you know what, I'm going to stop for a moment and see if there are any questions about any of the stuff that I've just relayed to you, because there's a lot to consider and a lot that we don't know yet. So anybody have any questions that you want to share? The question in the chat was, are we going to do the forward if we're phased back? So the word from DPI is we need to test all students, period. If we're virtual, it means bring the students in to test. And I've been pushing back on that since day one. So what we're looking at is actually, if we are in person at specific grade levels that do the forward test, and we believe that it's, again, I'm concerned about the social emotional learning levels of both staff and students. And so what we'll do is we'll bring this in a timely manner. And it might be that schools are in the best place to judge where their students and staff are at. So a school may say, you know what, I think we're ready, we're going to start now. But another school might say, yeah, maybe next week. And we're going to try and be flexible, keeping in mind that there are windows of time. So let me once more breathe. And if anybody wants to jump in with a question, please feel free.
A question I would have is, like, the students that you touch with access are all over the building. And right now the model seems to be to keep people in pods. And so then has thought been given to, like, the contradiction that's implicit in that?
Absolutely. And I can tell you that unfortunately, the meeting isn't until Monday at noon, when senior leadership and OMG and I are meeting together to go over the details of what that actually would look like. I appreciate hearing that and that concern, and it is real. And so we have to say, here's what we know, here's what we can do, here's what we can't. And how does that play out? I don't have an answer for you right now, but I appreciate that, and I will have an answer for you. And I know there was a question in the chat. Can you hold off on planning for testing until we get the green light from me? I liken this to setting the table. You're not sure when the guests are arriving, but we need to set the table. We need to make sure that things are in place. So we're going to move forward with certain pieces of each one of these assessments, so that when you are ready, when buildings are ready, when students and staff are ready, we're able to just say, all right, let's go. So we'll kind of go over some of that as we move ahead, keeping in mind that some of the PowerPoint I actually made about 2 days ago prior to knowing that the announcement was going to be made. So there might be some things that I'm going to be pulling back, but keep that in mind. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint, and we're going to take a look at access right now. If you have not ever done access before, or if you have staff in your building that has never done that, they will need to have logins, accounts set up in the WIDA website for professional development reasons. Please let Sarah or myself know, and we will set them up. Just wanted to make sure that you understood that it's important that even if we don't know exactly the date of when access is going to be given in a specific building, that the professional development move forward. We need to ensure that everybody understands what the process is. Okay, normally I would be telling you about, we're going to take this in 3 parts. Each one of the sections would have a timeline on it: preparation, OASIS updated, professional development, etc. And I would say by this date, this is going to happen. Of course, nothing is what it traditionally was. So where are we at? We have all the students who are identified as English learners have been uploaded into WIDA AMS, which is the website, the software that we use to manage the assessment. That was done by the Department of Public Instruction. And we know that in OASIS, student IEPs are as up to date as they're going to be. And so the next thing that comes in is the professional development. And if there are any changes, we have had students who've arrived, students who have left. If their student has just gotten an IEP, we need to know that. So all these changes, any changes, need to be shared with Sarah Wallner or myself. So we can take care of the back end, what's going on with the AMS site. Things yet to do. And again, we don't know how the scheduling will work. As the question was raised, how is that going to work when we're in pods in classrooms? Can we pull students out? Can we go in? What is that going to look like? And so those kinds of things are still to be determined. And those are great questions. So scheduling is something that we're still a little bit too far out. But there are some things that are going to be the same as in the past. So in the past, we have a sequence that we follow. The listening and the reading are first. And so the speaking and the writing are the second. So you've got to do the first portions before the second 2 portions. That has not changed. The current window is opens on February 22nd. And I put a question mark about when it closes, because my conversations with DPI have been like this. We're thinking about April 30th. We published that, but we might extend it to the middle of May or even to the early part of June. To which I'm saying, that's great. We're still, we still have some constraints that the pandemic is causing. And so the more time that's available, yay, but we'll have to see where this all goes. Now, as far as the timeline, again, as we discussed, safe testing, if we have to test, and the state is saying that we do, if we're regardless of whether we're in person or virtual, setting that whole kind of bizarre concept aside, assuming that we're going to be back in person, we need to have safe testing protocols. Those are in process. We're working with Sally Zerbel-Danish. We're working with DPI. We're working with WIDA. Sally, if you don't know, is in charge of the nursing and our direct connection to Dane County, the public health, Madison and Dane County. We're working with the right people to get protocols in place and to go through considerations and have this for both you and students. Once we have those will be posted on the web. They will be for not only staff, to be shared with students as well as with families. So we're trying to make sure that everybody understands exactly what is the expectation if this is going to happen and what that would look like to be safe. I know a big concern with both access and with forward testing is there's a whole component that involves a headset, not just headphones, but also the microphone. How does that work? How are we going to get that clean? What are we going to do? These are conversations again going on. I'm digging into CDC recommendations of how to safely use those kinds of items. And we know that we don't have enough for every student to have one. We will and keep that for the whole duration of the test. I'm going to be meeting with tech services tomorrow to see what is it that we can best provide for you, for our students, to ensure that number one, it works, that it is an option that actually does work for the computer speaking portion, for instance, but also is it something that will provide safe and reasonable well-being of both those people who are taking the tests and those people who are giving the tests. So those are things that we're considering. And I'm going to stop at this moment because that's what I have for you for access. Sarah, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, just a couple things to add to that. Like Tim was saying, we don't really know exactly how things will play out, but we are in the business of being prepared. And along with that comes that all of the materials for access are being sent from DPI to our district next week. So those are going to arrive to Tim and I next week regardless. And what we're going to do, the things that you would typically expect for our office to assist with during, the preparation for access, that includes materials, but also printing of testing tickets. Those things will still be handled by our office. We're still planning to do them. And so we will likely start sending materials in those weeks in between to the grade levels that we know are coming back, just so that you have them and that we're prepared. It may be that you never open them and they come back to us, but at least you'd have them. We're not going to rush out, middle school materials and high school materials quite yet, but what we're doing is we're planning for that. So just in case anybody is wondering, like, will I need to print my own tickets? Do I need to do those pieces? We still plan to do that portion for you, and I'll still be loading in accommodation. So those are things that are in the works that we will have to you on the sooner side rather than the later side, regardless of, how soon we're actually testing.
Right. There's been a couple questions in the chat. A couple of things I just want to point out. First of all, I'm going to respond to Patty. We'll talk about, Sarah and I will work through if you can order additional K-Access testing kits, but lamination is one of the things that is coming up again and again, or the plastic sleeves that can be used, and disinfected without affecting what's in them. That's along the lines of things, for instance, for forward, but also definitely something that can be done as far as the access. Now, the question that was raised by Megan regarding proximity for kinder access. Yeah, I mean, we all know that you don't sit across the room from a kindergartner and say, hey, over there, let's. So we will have to talk about how this works. This is something that I want to share with, again, the experts on the health front, and how they would envision this happening. And then I will get back to you and say, here's what they're saying, and share that with you. I am absolutely concerned about the safety of both our students and you and our staff. So I want to make sure that what we do is something that is within the safe guidelines. And I realize that sitting 6 feet away from a kindergartner is not necessarily something that is going to be easy to do. or if they'll let that happen, or if it can be actually done that way. So Megan, I may reach out to you and just see if that we can work on something together, and then share it with everybody. I know that's your question and you didn't necessarily want to get involved, but I may just bounce some ideas off from you or anyone else who is interested in making sure that we do this safely. Thanks. Any other questions or concerns regarding access testing? Before I let you go, and before we move on, I just wanted to make sure that you understand that the state is saying all English language learners, regardless of whether they're face-to-face, they're in a hybrid model, or they're virtual, all English language learners need to be tested using the access test. So if we're in a concurrent model, concurrent instruction, those students who are in a virtual setting still have to, according to the state, still have to be tested. So we want to make sure that I'm clear about that, and we'll get, again, what does that look like? How can we do this? We may have to look at, are there additional sites? I don't know. So these are all questions that are in play. And again, I appreciate your feedback, your flexibility. And if you've got ideas like, I wonder if this will work, please, please, please share them. If you want to just put something out there, if you use WIDA Screener at Madison, that is Sarah, myself, Ben, and who else is on there?
Claudia is the other one on there.
Claudia, yes.
Our clerical and OMG.
Yeah, so I mean, it's getting to people who can at least say, great question, let's find the answer. So couple other questions.
We have a question in the chat.
Yep.
What if parents refuse the testing due to COVID concerns?
Great question. We're going to be treating that like any other situation where a family refuses to test. In Access, we all know that there is no opt-out version. So we have to account for all students at the end of this. So we have to do kind of a final accounting. And what we need to know is send that information to us, just like any opt-out. If a parent, we just say that they decline the opportunity to take the test. And so make sure that you record that, share that with us. And so that when we get that information, we will make sure it's in the software as well. I am expecting that there will be a large number of students that opt out. Families choose not to do this. I could be wrong. Let's see, I know another question. Andy, you were talking about the repercussions if we don't do this. That's a great question. I put that to our friends at DPI, and they have said, you need to test. They didn't say, if you didn't test, this is going to happen. They just said, the expectation is that you will test. And so we're going to try and comply as best we can. If we end up testing 35% of our students, and we've made concerted effort to ensure that we have given students opportunity, then that's what we've done. I'm sure that we won't be alone in the whole situation of not testing every single student. We want to, again, do our best to comply because the data can be used. There's all kinds of questions about how valuable it is, but be that as it may, we're going to keep moving forward on this. And then I think Brooke had a question from earlier. Yeah, if they don't want to bring, again, I am not about to fight with parents and say, no, you must have your student here. If they are concerned about not, COVID enough that they're not going to send their student to school for instruction, we need to offer this. And if they refuse, then it becomes a declined. Okay. I'm not going to automatically assume that just because that they are in a virtual setting that this is the case, but at least to begin with, we're going to offer this opportunity. And again, how that will look will vary by school and grade level potentially. So there are still a lot of things in the mix. All right. Other questions about access? Yeah, well, where will out of school students go to be tested? And that's a great question. I appreciate it. I don't know. That's something we have to figure out. Again, is there some place? I don't know. There are a lot of things that I could postulate on, and some of you would go, "Why did he say that?" So I'm not going to pretend like I have an answer. But thank you. Those are the questions that need to be addressed so that we can do this safely. Sorry, Brooke. Sorry, I know that's a non-answer, but that's what I got.
It's really just putting it out there more to ensure that when you have your meeting, it comes up. Because to put you all and your team through the stress of trying to fit a round peg in a square hole is just silly right now. But thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And so again, as you think about these things, I mean, after today, after this meeting, if you say, "Oh, but what about this?" Please don't hesitate to send it to Sarah and myself, and we'll keep these things running. I don't know if there's any advantage to having a Google Doc shared with everyone that we can put questions in. And so if there's a common question, you can say, "Oh, look, someone's asked that already." So maybe we'll do that specifically for access and share that with all of you. So you can have your chance to say, "Here's my question," put it out there, and we'll see what we can do. All right.
Was the DPI being kind of kept abreast of what the real life issues are here on the ground? I mean, like in real schools, there's some two-way communication going on back and forth between you and them?
Yes, absolutely. And quite honestly, I would not want to be DPI because they are sitting with the rock in the hard place, so to speak. We know that the pandemic is very real, and these are safety concerns that are very real. The other end is, by law, for instance, the forward test has to be given. So they're in a position that says, yes, we know both of these things. What do we do? So their stance has to be, and I don't fault them, their stance has to be, you need to test. They cannot say don't test unless there's a waiver in place in which they've done their part and have put in those applications. So even though, sometimes or always we make them to be the villain, I understand where they're at. They know, they've heard loud and clear, both from MMSD, from Milwaukee, from Racine, from Green Bay, from all the schools where we have the highest percentage of English learners, about our concerns. And they reach out to us as well as we connect with them. So just know that is something that we're in constant conversation with them about. Thank you. All right. So now let's continue with the fun. And we will move on to the forward test. Those of you who are here for access, you're welcome to stick around, but please know that you don't have to. Not everybody has dealt with forward. Last year, we were all set to do this, and we didn't. So please keep in mind that some of this is review for many of you, but just kind of adding this into the mix so that we're all on the same page. We know that we use Chromebooks. We know that there is something called eDirect, and that's the software that is used for the backside of things, and essentially running the test. We know that there's English language arts and math for all grades, that we add science and social studies for grade 4. Also 8th grade gets that. There are some changes in response to COVID. So DPI has gone in and said, so how can, if we have to have this test, what is it that we can do to make this more tolerable, more doable? And so the changes are, this year, there's no text-dependent analysis portion in English language arts. That's an entire section. It's usually the first section of the test that they would like to have students do. I believe it's 40 to 50 minutes. And so that is for this year, and this year only at this point, they're dropping the text-dependent analysis section. So English language arts, instead of 4 sections, will only have 3. Also, every single time a test is given, there are usually a few questions mixed in that don't count. These are field test questions. In other words, the vendor is saying, we're going to try these questions, this particular type of question, this question itself, to see how students respond to it, because we think this is a good question for the future. They've removed all of those from every single section. So they will not be in the science, they will not be in the social studies, math, or English language arts. So what has happened is there's a shorter overall test. This means that it's approximately 60 to 75 minutes shorter, maybe 80 minutes shorter for our students in 4th grade. Definitely an hour shorter for those in 3rd and 5th. So the test itself is shorter, which is good news. So if we have to give it, we're looking at slightly less time. So just some things to be thinking about. I'm not pushing this, so please don't take this as an imperative to start. But these are some of the things that we need to be thinking about. The forward window doesn't open until the end of March, and it goes through the middle of May currently. So we have some time. We're going to take this in a very thoughtful, planful manner, but I want you to be thinking about some of these things so that, again, you can ask us questions. Have you considered this? Are you considering that? And I think I will put out another document for the forward, so you can ask your questions and share that with everyone. So the training that is required to proctor the forward test, again, is online. It's a video created by DPI, and it's called Test Administrator Training. I will have that on our website, as well as a link to that on the DPI site. It comes with PDF handouts, so you can take a look at it. You can print them out. I would not, but that's available for professional development. Reminder that all staff who is involved with this does need to actually do the professional development, because there typically are some changes every year. It takes about 35 minutes to do this, at least it did last year. It may take a little bit less time this year. Also, you will be finding on our website in the security agreement. So one of the things that is really important for any kind of standardized testing is that we are careful with the actual material. It is not to be photocopied. It is not to be shared, taken a picture of. You cannot take a picture of a test while it's in progress, send it to me saying, what is this question? That is breaking this agreement in a major way. So this test administrator proctor agreement is something that all staff who administer the test to students will need to sign, whether that's a CC teacher, a BRT, or if it's a classroom, regular classroom teacher. They need to get this to you as the building assessment coordinator for Forward. Hang on to them. Do not send them to me. I will be giving the same kind of document to you, and it will be essentially a building or a school assessment coordinator confidentiality agreement. You need to sign that and send it to me. Essentially, it's kind of a tiered layer cake approach that I am going to certify to the state that we are going to live by these rules. You're telling me that each school is going to live by the rules. Teachers are telling you that they are going to live by the rules. So I want to just say one last thing. This comes, it seems really redundant, but keep in mind that there are school districts that have been caught up in cheating scandals. I do not want our staff, our buildings, anyone associated with MMSD to be involved in any kind of this kind of a situation. My goal is to not be on the front page of the State Journal. Okay. So the Forward exam, some updates. There's really nothing new in the software. Some things that you need to think about. There are practice exams available. Let's just see if we've got here. Who takes the training? Yes, Sarah, thank you for responding to that. It's anyone who administers the test.
So if I am with a teacher and I'm trained, would that be fine? Or like, do classroom teachers need to do this?
If you are in the room, all right. I would say that if a classroom teacher is not familiar with the test, and yet they're in the room, first of all, they need to sign the confidentiality agreement because they have access to viewing the questions. And that's something that's really important that we understand. If you are actually running the test, then you would be the one that needs to take the training.
Okay, I'm mostly just thinking teachers have a lot on their plate. So if we could get away with them having to skip this and still like ethically make sure.
Absolutely.
But I hear you. It would be hard to be in and out of rooms. I'm just trying to see if like 2 or 3 of us were trained, if that would be sufficient.
Right. And I get it. And, many teachers have actually been through this and they know the drill. So they could respond. But I would say that the person who is the proctor in the room needs to have the training. So it's hard to be in many places at once. If you can schedule it, and again, remember, we're not trying to push this all on one day. If you can schedule it that you are going to be in each one of the physically in the rooms, then I'm fine with that. Again, having staff sign off on the confidentiality agreement, but that's a pretty big ask. So,
okay.
But I also understand it's that balancing act between what we're asking teachers to do, what we can do ourselves. Sarah and I deal with this all the time because we want to make sure we're doing enough that you aren't asked to do everything. So
okay, thank you.
You bet. The thing that we always work around is text to speech, read aloud issues, striving readers, and supporting for English language learners. So we're going to kind of go and take a look at that. Those of you who've been through this, nothing here has changed. We have 3 levels of supports and accommodations. The first one is tools available for every student. Designated supports come on recommendation of classroom teacher, something that's used regularly in the classroom. It's available. And then finally, accommodations require an IEP or a 504. And again, it should be used regularly in the classroom. They come in 2 flavors, embedded and non-embedded. So embedded means it's in the software. So we have to literally go in and turn that on or off. Non-embedded would an embedded example would be text to speech. And a non-embedded would be a small group setting. Okay, that may be the case for all students this year, but in the past we've had, especially in an IEP, students must be in a small group setting. That's just recognized that that's a non-embedded support or accommodation. Okay. Now, the differences, there are some differences between what we've been so far looking at this year, which is the FastBridge and ANet, and the forward. So again, 3 levels, embedded, non-embedded. All of this has to be done prior to printing of tickets. And I am really sad to report that we still have to print tickets and cut them apart. It is not, I've been pushing on this for years, and we're getting close. They said maybe next year. It's like, thank you very much. The process of getting this information into the software from the eDirect is going to begin. We're going to be pulling information from OASIS regarding students with IEPs or 504s by the end of this month. So that's coming up in about 2 weeks. And so as you are preparing to get classrooms ready for students to receive students, we're going to be doing the same thing, only we're going to be preparing to ensure that accommodations are in place. You should have all received something regarding English language learners and their supports, as well as those who are striving readers. This went out. We need to get this back by the 19th, as we have limited time to add these kinds of accommodations or supports into eDirect. Sarah, I don't know if you want to add anything here or not.
No, just a reminder to everyone that we're gathering all of this information now so it can be loaded in a mass upload manner. But that doesn't mean that if you have, say, an EL that comes on board in March or April, or maybe an IEP update, that we can't change in the future. What we're trying to avoid here is doing a lot of small manual changes, because after, I believe it's the 26th of February, we can no longer upload things. We have to do them manually. So going into each individual student and adding supports. So that's one reason why we ask for this information so early on.
Thank you. And just again, this is, I know it's a lot on everybody's plate, but please keep in mind that this is so that you don't have to do a ton of other work on the back end. So we're trying to balance what we're asking you. We spend a lot of time questioning, is this really important that we ask for your help, your support, or not? And this one is something that we can't do on our own. Striving readers. Every year we run into, we've got readers who need to have text-to-speech. If that, again, is something that is used all the time or regularly in a classroom, that is something that we can have a conversation over. DPI is not anxious to give that to every third grader, for instance. So, all right, text-to-speech, here we go. Text-to-speech is designated support. If that is the case, that we need to do this for a student, it will read directions, questions, answers, and everything in the ELA portion except for the reading passage session. I'm not sure if it's going to be session 4 or 3 this year, but that particular section is designed to look at student comprehension. So they will have to read a passage or 2 and respond to it with questions. So it will not read that particular portion. If it is an accommodation, if it's written into the IEP that this is needed, DPI has a couple of things that they will accept as reasons. Number one is it's a visually impaired student, typically who is not yet proficient in Braille. So if you think about all the students that we have, this is a really small portion of the students in MMSD who have IEPs. So it's highly unlikely that you will be able to put into an IEP that they need text to speech if they really don't.
And one more thing I will add about that particular text to speech as an accommodation is that we, just like in the last couple of years, we at the district level cannot add this. It must be DPI approved. So if you have a student that you feel should qualify for this, there's an application process and we can get that rolling for you. So it would just require an email to myself to get that started.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay. I'm going to go through the rest of these forward items quickly because we will have a chance to look at this again in the near future. So there is an online practice when it comes time to doing this. We'll talk about practicing, especially with third graders who've never done this before. Tickets will be available after March 8th. And we will be dealing with the different content areas in different colors. So we will get more information to you after March 8th, especially since we're talking about going back in phased approaches. So prior to actually delivering you the tickets, we will, because we don't want you to have tons of things that you're not going to actually use or use right away, we will be sharing this with you in the future. All right, and as if this is what you've been waiting for, results will come back later in the year than typically in the past. Results will go out to families later than in the past. So just keep that in mind. All right. Moving on to ANet, we'll just kind of briefly stop here, then I'll open it up to questions and we'll go from there. So the ANet Interim A2 for English Language Arts, this opens on Monday, closes in 2 weeks. Just a reminder that it's important to share this information with families. There are letters, information on the website. If you need something, please let me know. I know that I just got a request for the Hmong version of the family letter. I believe I have that and have to post that. So if not, I will let you know and we'll get that taken care of. Here's the big one. Progress on single sign-on or class link. And are we connecting ANet to class link? Is it working? The answer is yes. As of this morning, we had I thought it was as of yesterday morning, but there was a glitch. And so we've worked with it with tech services. And if you would be so kind to check on that, that would be great. You don't have to. There are students that have been need to be updated that are new to the district since we last we pulled this information. So if you have someone that is new to the district that cannot get on to ANet for this assessment, let us know. The text-to-speech portion of ANet is being handled by Sarah. We're basing this on student IEPs. While you as a data assessment coordinator in the building for ANet can actually go in and do this, it's pretty much done. So please let us know if you have any questions. We want to make sure it's consistent across the district. The reason why we don't give text-to-speech for all students is because the test is not designed to do that. So it should not be something that's given to all students. So IEP based only. Right now, ANet is optional, but keep in mind that the third rendition of this in the spring is expected. The chiefs have said in no uncertain terms that this is something that we need to do. And with that, the last piece is opt-outs in any way, shape, or form. If parents say or families say no, please make it in a request in writing. It could be handwritten. It could be old-fashioned use of a typewriter. It could be an email. but it needs to be a written request. Send that a copy of that or a scan of it to Sarah and or myself, and we'll, because we have to keep track of that for the school board. Please, parents and families may say it to your face, I want to opt my child out. I can't accept that. So it needs to be in writing of some sort. So with that, we're going to come back and open it up to questions. And thank you for your patience. We appreciate it. So here we are. Lots of stuff.
Hi, Tim. Sorry if I missed this earlier. I jumped on a little bit late. Regarding the forward assessment, do we know who will be assessed? Will it only be students who return to the building in 3 through 5?
Great question. And the response from DPI is that all students are expected to be assessed. So if a student is a family chooses the virtual, we're supposed to figure out a way to bring them into the buildings or a building, a location, and provide them the test. That's what the state is saying. In no uncertain terms, we're not getting a break to say, no, you only have to assess the 67% of the students who are in face-to-face settings. So yeah, so those are some of the things that we're working through. And how does that look? What does that look like? There are some schools that have spaces adjacent to them or close to them that they could say, well, we'll just meet with those 5 children in this space on this date and time. Yeah, not everybody has that. So we're trying to make sure it's equitable, that we use our resources wisely, and that it is fair to both staff and families. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I think one of the things that we'll do is I'm going to stop recording in a moment. Sarah and I will hang out. So if you have a question that you don't want to have recorded forever, then you can go ahead and ask it then. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Please let me know if you have any questions.